Don't get me wrong, I love Ninjago. From the sets to the show itself, I've always found the theme incredibly endearing, and none of it would exist without the groundwork laid by the original series. Looking back, early Ninjago stands out compared to the many shows of its era. It often felt more focused on telling the story it wanted to tell, rather than leaning heavily on childish humor. That's not to say jokes weren't present. Comedy has always been a part of the show's DNA, and without that balance, it probably wouldn't have lasted this long. But in its current phase, that comedic side sometimes feels like it's beginning to detract from the overall experience. Part of this shift can be understood through something called Standards and Practices, or S&P. Standards and Practices are network departments responsible for evaluating television content to ensure it meets legal, ethical, and audience appropriateness guidelines. For animated series aimed at younger viewers, this means darker themes, violence, or intensity must remain accessible and suitable for children. Humor and tonal softening aren't explicitly required, but creative teams often insert them to stay within those boundaries. In earlier Ninjago, that balance felt more integrated. The show rarely lost sight of its narrative momentum. I consider seasons 1 through 10 the gold standard. By the midpoint of a season, everyone seemed fully locked in on the overarching story, and the series undeniably owed some of its success to that focus. More recent seasons, however, sometimes struggle to maintain that same cohesion. Tonal interruptions can pull viewers out of the story, myself included. Now, the goal of this video isn't to rip on modern Ninjago, not in the slightest. I actually really enjoy Dragons Rising. This is simply an observation I've had since season 1 of this sequel series. So, with that said, let me put on my tinfoil hat and walk you through my little conspiracy. And hey, be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. Without further ado, let's get into it. The first example I want to look at comes from the finale of Season 2 of Dragons Rising. Yes, I literally just made an entire video glazing this finale, but on rewatch, I still noticed something interesting. To set this up, I need to introduce Roby. This is actually a solid example of Ninjago balancing tone, and for the most part, I think it works pretty well. Throughout this season, there's a massive elemental tournament where winners absorb the powers of those they defeat, and the game's master, Roby, serves as a stylistic counterbalance to the tension of the competition. His humor and showmanship adds personality and energy that genuinely enhances the experience. From an S&P perspective, Roby's levity illustrates the kind of tonal moderation that keeps intense material accessible to younger viewers. His humor softens the tension without negating stakes, allowing serious conflict to coexist with lighter beats in a way that generally works pretty well. Midway through the finale, Roby is knocked off a cliff during the confrontation with Noct, the same battle the ninja are engaged in. Later, while that fight continues, Wildfire goes to rescue him. What follows is the moment that pulled me out of this episode a bit. The tone abruptly shifts from a high-stakes conflict to a playful, exaggerated interaction between the two, complete with dragon romance roaring and other rom-com beats.
In my culture, the fire dragons. That's how we declare love. Roar!
Ugh. Now, I'm not saying this ruins the episode, not at all, but the contrast is very striking. We jump from an intense narrative climax to something that very clearly reminds you this is still a show aimed at younger audiences. Whether this serves as tonal relief or structural necessity, likely influenced by the need to keep things S&P friendly, the shift can feel jarring in the middle of a finale. That said, this example is honestly more of a nitpick, because what comes next is where my frustration really begins. In one of the final episodes of Dragons Rising Season 3, the ninjas split up to summon the Archdragon of Focus in order to defeat Thunderfang. Meanwhile, Lord Ross breaches the monastery, for reasons we still don't fully understand, and proceeds to demolish everyone in his path. It's darker than much of the season, but it's absolutely compelling to watch unfold. You get the sense he's going to achieve exactly what he wants, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop him.
2 icons? Impossible.
Send my greetings to Egot. The greatest treasure of all. A rare Ninjago variant. My collection is finally complete.
So during this intense and engaging sequence, why do the ninjas' respective quests devolve into what feels like filler? One team is arguing with a cyclops and a sorcerer inside a coconut. Another is trying to stop a goofy villain army from stealing a unicorn figurine, all while attempting to stay quiet. These detours end up obfuscating the urgency of the moment. Talk about tonal whiplash. Watching these segments, I didn't know what to feel. I just wanted to cut back to whatever Roz was doing as quickly as possible. Likely, the writers were attempting to balance darker material with lighter beats to remain appropriate for younger audiences under S&P guidelines, even if the effect here feels distracting. And this isn't an isolated case. A smaller, but perhaps more telling example shows up in the episode called The Screaming Earth. Kai, Cole, and Frack are uncovering the remains of a dead source dragon. Now keep in mind, source dragons are essentially the cosmic deities of the Ninjago multiverse. This moment is framed with genuine awe and a heavy sense of morality. We're looking at the bones of an actual god. Yet, throughout this discovery, the tension is constantly punctured by Kai, repeatedly eating these awful tasting wafers and spitting them out and playing their reaction for laughs. Individually, the gag is harmless, but in context, it's extremely distracting for me. From an S&P standpoint, it feels like the team was worried the imagery of a dead dragon might be too dark or heavy for the demographic, so they used Kai as a human pressure release valve. But by leaning into the bad cracker joke, the episode accidentally sabotages the very sense of scale and mystery it's trying to build. Instead of mourning a legend, we're watching a sitcom bit. There are other instances I could dive into, Empress Beatrix from Season 1 being a huge factor, but that's honestly a topic I may save for a future video. Now, why do I bring this up? Again, I'm not trying to mindlessly rag on Dragons Rising. I genuinely find the show very interesting, and I just wish the tone was a little more consistent, like it was in the original seasons. At the same time, it's easier for me to critique this story than it is for me to write it. I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, whether it's LEGO interference, creative constraints, or the effects of S&P. These factors inevitably shape how tone is handled, and explains why lighthearted beats show up even in serious moments. Ultimately, this is just an observation. Dragons Rising is still very engaging and creative, but examining how tonal shifts can reflect external constraints, like S&P, gives us a lens for understanding why some moments can be inconsistent. Basically, what I'm saying is that I believe that S&P should give the writers a little bit more leeway. I can only imagine how frustrating it must be for the writers to constantly adjust their vision to meet these requirements, which I have no doubt they're dealing with behind the scenes. So next time you're watching this show and something feels out of place, it's more likely than not due to the factors beyond the writer's control. All we can do is be patient and focus on the genuinely pivotal, impactful moments that makes Ninjago what it is. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of my little conspiracy, and have a good one.